I'm Whitney.
I'm Mindy.
And I'm Deb.
We're three best friends who love nerdy things.
Well, some people think we're nerdy, but we think we're pretty awesome.
This is our nerdiest thing.
Hello, fellow nerds, and welcome to Our Nerdiest Thing. Today, we're discussing The Fall of the House of Usher, Episode 3, Murder in the Rue Morgue. I almost did that, too. That was a missed opportunity for all three of us.
Not for me and Mindy.
No, but I mean, like, for all three of us to do it together. Yeah, that was my missed opportunity. And I apologize to all of our listeners and to you guys for missing that. Before we get into it all, Deb, will you please share our nerdiest cocktail?
Of course. Tonight's drink is named Monkey Shake. And it's...
Sorry. I had not seen that yet. I was not ready.
It's themed after nosy half-sisters. And this drink pairs well with turning lemons into an empire, your assistants breaking up with you, and shots of adrenaline. It may cause you to get eaten alive by a medically tested chimpanzee.
Wah, wah.
I know, but it's a big banana shake full of alcohol. So
good.
You're getting a serving of fruit, and you don't need to feel guilty.
It's got fiber. It's good for you.
There is one whole frozen banana in each serving.
Yeah.
And
Bananas are good.
Some almond milk. It's not so bad for you.
Yeah.
It's basically a smoothie.
Both the liquors are clear liquors. So
that's good.
yeah.
Yeah.
Drink
Sure.
it. Drink it. The recipe will be on our website and on our Instagram at ournerdiestthing.com.
Well, thank you so much for the monkey shake. I just enjoy that a lot. Mindy, will you please share our nerdiest vocabulary?
I would love to. I've got a couple today. The first one is a tie-in to Edgar Allan Poe, like a character, how it ties in. And this was a sort of a blink and you might miss it. But in this episode, not related at all to the main character of the episode, but Verna poses as a patient named Pamela Clem. Mm-hmm. And Clem actually was Edgar's wife Eliza's maiden name.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
So that was a little Easter egg.
I did look up Fuck You, Tina, after Damn It, Toby last week. Because I was like, is that also something
that
I
would've been hilarious.
I couldn't find anything.
That was hysterical. Just I hate like how bitchy she was, but like it was so funny when she was like, "My name is Beth."
Yeah. I like that a lot.
Whatever, Tina.
Yeah, doesn't sound as good. So anyway, that was just one little tie-in, and then of course we have the lady of the episode, Camille.
The lady of the episode.
So Camille actually derives from her story. Actually, I was been reading about a lot of this, and Prospero and Camille are the only ones that their episodes actually their names come from that
actual story,
right?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
Okay.
the other ones aren't going to actually be from their story, which will be just a little different. So Camille is a character in the story, which I know Whitney is going to tell us a little more about. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the etymology of the name Camille, because it is surprisingly not like the character's actual personality. So obviously she gets her name from the Poe story, but the name itself has several different meanings from various sources. Like I kept coming up with new ways to say the same two things. So here we go.
That's my favorite thing to do.
Camille can mean virginal.
Oh.
No.
Yeah, not this Camille.
Perfect. No.
No.
Unblemished character. Absolutely
Maybe
not.
we're going for irony with this one.
Yeah, maybe.
I think so. So that's like the first sort of vibe that Camille is supposed to bring. Then it can also mean acolyte, young ceremonial attendant, helper to the priest, or young cult officiant.
Oh. I mean,
Cult
she,
what?
Cult officiant.
she kind
Like
of is.
someone who would
I mean, that's-
officiate a cult?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's the closest for sure.
Yeah. I mean, if you think of the Usher family as a cult.
Yeah.
She
And
is.
she's the one that sort
Yeah.
of puppet strings it all. But yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess she could be helper to the priest, which would be
The father figure.
Pim.
She is remarkably good at her job,
She really
unfortunately.
is. Yeah.
So good.
She's evil as fuck, but very good at her job.
Yeah.
So since I didn't get anything like unironic about
Yeah.
that, I went to the Urban Dictionary because I haven't done it in a while, and I just thought it'd be funny. And disturbingly, most of them were like, "Oh, Camille is such a pretty and nice person," but
Is this middle school Urban Dictionary?
I can always find.
No, because they would have been like, "Have a nice summer, Camille."
I can always find a few gems, right?
Well, sure. So, it is Urban Dictionary after all.
These felt a little more Camille-like.
Oh.
So, first we have Camille can be very funny at times and mean. She fights when she wants to. She's a real instigator and wants to know all the tea and shade.
That is
correct.
That is correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did Camille write that?
The next one was someone who will throw all her female friends under the bus. A Camille is not trustworthy, but fun for the guys at work.
Oh, my.
Which I felt tied in pretty well, actually.
Yeah.
And then finally, this one. It's just, I'm just going to read it. She's honestly a big fucking bitch, but oh well.
Aren't we all?
Yeah.
That just, the name Camille just makes me think of Camille Grammer, who used to be married to Kelsey Grammer, aka Frasier.
Yes.
And she was on The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills.
For me, Camille is equivalent to the name Darby. No offense to any of our listeners, but for me, every girl named Darby in high school was a fucking bitch.
See, I think of it like a grandma.
Camille?
Oh.
Like little old Camille.
No, the first season,
slaving over the stove.
the very first season of The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, there was a big infamous fight, and Kyle Richards said, "You are such a fucking liar, Camille," and that's what I think of anytime I hear that name or see it. That's what I think of.
Episode title.
Well, thank you so much for that vocabulary, Mindy.
Little insight.
Yeah, well, I'm going to give us the nerdy and dirty recap, which is going to segue into my deep dive. And I'm just going to let you guys know it is a bummer. So hold on to your butts. Here we go. So Edgar Allan Poe's short story, Murder in the Rue Morgue.
Okay, I have to butt
Not
in
a
for a
short
little bit.
story.
Not a short story.
Well, I mean, it's not a novel.
No, but it's not
So
short.
technically it's a short story, but it's much longer than Master
Tried
of the
to
Red
print it
Death.
out in 20 pages later.
Yeah, I listened to an audiobook and wanted to fall asleep. I actually was not familiar with this story at all before preparing for this podcast episode. All I knew is what, Mindy, you had talked about during the first episode, that Auguste Dupin is the prototype of the detective character. And obviously that's where that name of that character in the show comes from, is this story. So this is a really weird story. And the introduction was the most boring introduction I've ever listened to / read in a story at all. And I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah, like, let's talk about card players. Let's talk about chess players. And I was like, oh my, get to the murder. Let's go. All right. So basically, this story has a double murder of a mother and daughter. And there were a lot of weird circumstances that are giving the police a hard time trying to figure out what happened and who to arrest, who to look for. So Auguste Dupin uses this mystery as essentially a thinking exercise with our narrator to help the narrator follow critical thinking and thinking outside the box to solve these murders. So through a series of observations and looking at the crime scene itself, Dupin is able to deduce that the murderer police are searching for is actually an escaped orangutan. Yep. Which was a twist I never saw coming, to be completely honest with you. So Dupin finds a sailor looking for his escaped orangutan and questions that sailor, who confirms the theory. And then basically everybody goes on their merry little way, except for the mother and daughter, who are victims of this like really weird crime. Probably the strangest crime I've ever seen in literature. So that's the short story. The long short story. In the episode and Follow the House of Usher, there was a lot going on. This was much different for me as a viewer than Prospero's story, because I felt Prospero's episode was very much focused on Prospero, and this one kind of jumped all over the place a lot more. So we've got Roderick still narrating all of this to Dupin in his childhood home. And so remember, everything that we're seeing happening is happening in flashbacks, except for Roderick in the like fallen down childhood home. That's the only thing that's current. So we see the family finding out about Prospero's death, dealing with that fallout. We learn the sister-in-law was a victim of the acid rain. That was one of my questions last week. She was a victim of the party. So dun dun dun. It's going to be a fun combo with the family trying to figure out why she was there and how did she find out about the party and all that. So Camille takes over the PR nightmare of Prospero's death. Leo gets super wasted and wakes up to him or someone else having brutally murdered his partner's cat that he quickly cleans up and doesn't tell anybody about. So I'm sure that's not going to come up later.
Also, someone murdered a cat and he cleaned it up, and his boyfriend who stayed pretty sober didn't wake up.
What didn't wake up that whole time
and didn't question why he made the house spotless?
He woke up and was like, "Oh, you cleaned," and I was like, "No, that should be a red flag."
He has a cleaning lady,
right? Like
right?
That whole thing was super strange. So we did get a flashback to the 1970s Roderick that I enjoy so much more than the current day Roderick. Roderick was getting screwed over by the Fortunato CEO and being told by Madeline that he needs to basically bide his time and bulldoze later. But his wife Annabelle tells Roderick straight up she doesn't like Madeline, which I'm sure isn't going to come back later and kill her or something. I'm like, you just straight up told him, I don't like your sister. I was like, dang.
And he straight up dodged that.
Oh yeah,
like,
he
didn't even like
he started reciting the poem. Yeah. I was like, all right, you keep doing you.
You be quiet, Annabelle Lee.
Yeah, exactly. So then we also have Victorine running into Verna, who's acting as one of her girlfriend partner's heart patients, which is what you mentioned earlier, Mindy. Victorine is clearly going to lie to get Verna into the human trial for the heart mesh thing. And Verna also shows up in Tammy's life as a stand-in for Tammy and Bill's usual sex worker, but no one, of course, knows that she's Verna. Just us as the audience recognize her as who she is. Last but not least, Verna also appears as a security guard at Victorine's lab when Camille shows up to get evidence of Victorine's lies and confirm rumors of her faking results with this animal trial. And wouldn't you know, the family calls that lab the Rue Morgue. Oh.
And I forget what it stands for because they said it in the previous episode.
Roderick Usher Enterprises.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Incorporate. Oh, yeah. Enterprise.
No, experimental.
It's
right. Actually experimental.
Or experimental, sorry. And then it's, I think, lab or something, but they call it the Rue Morgue instead of the Rue Lab or whatever that is. So, wouldn't it just make sense? One of the test animals that just happens to be a chimpanzee would get out of its cage while Camille is in the room and kill her. Because that fits the story.
Face.
Yeah, it was nutso. But Camille sees that animal as a Verna until the last second when she ultimately gets killed. And that was the episode Murder in the Rue Morgue.
That was an insane part of the show too, like the emotion behind it. And Carla, and I can never pronounce her last name right, but the woman that plays Verna,
Carla G.
Thank you, Carla G. Gugino. Like all of the aspects of the type of personality she has to play right there. Like she goes from human to animal within like 20 seconds.
Yeah, she's really good.
Really awesome.
That's what every episode I love Verna. You don't see her much, but
she makes an impact.
She's still the star.
She's doing stuff.
Yeah.
She's really like.
I'm telling you, you
out.
need to watch The Haunting of Hill House because she's awesome in that too.
Fun fact: she was also in Troop Beverly Hills.
Oh, she really was. Do you know the first time I saw her was in Son-in-Law? She's the redhead.
My gosh, that's funny.
Do you guys remember that movie? She like goes to college. That's her.
Pauly Shore, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I watched that movie so many times. I love it.
Okay. All right.
A girl moving and finding herself.
Yeah, she's been doing it for years and years. Good for her. Well, that brings me into my deep dive before we start talking about the actual episode, because my deep dive was inspired by Poe's story as opposed to anything in the actual episode itself. And this is a really big bummer, but it hits close to home.
A quick trigger warning, maybe?
Yes. I mean, it's not really that different from what's on the show.
I guess that's true. I mean,
but it's real as
life
opposed
is
to
different. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a trigger warning for murder.
Yeah, and this is a cold case,
right?
And of a mom and daughter.
Mindy's going to talk about animal testing, and I'm going to talk about companies hurting their consumers. So there's a lot of trigger warnings in this episode.
I mean, this is not going to be an uplifting episode.
But it's going to be fun.
It's also not an uplifting show.
You're going to love it. You're going to love it.
Yeah, it's going to be great. So while I was reading Poe's Murder in the Rue Morgue, the double murder in that story of the mother and daughter made me think of this cold case, not only here in Kentucky, but in my hometown of Bardstown. So I'm going to tell you the story of Kathy and Samantha Netherland. On April 22nd, 2014, 48-year-old Kathy Netherland just didn't show up for work. She was a special education teacher in the local school district, and she was well known for not just being a great teacher, but for loving her job. She had a lot of friends who loved her. She was a loving mother to her two daughters, Holly and Samantha. Holly was away at college at the time, but Samantha was 16 in high school, still living at home, and had just gotten her first prom dress a few days before. Kathy was not the type of person to just not show up with no phone call or anything at all. And so coworkers and friends immediately knew something was wrong when she just didn't show. So phone calls started going around, and eventually Kathy's father went to her house and unfortunately found the bodies of his daughter, Kathy, and granddaughter, Samantha. Kathy had been killed by gunshot, and Samantha had been brutally beaten and had her throat slit. it was determined that they had actually died the day before, April 21st. So when this news got out that Kathy and Samantha had been murdered, there was absolute panic in Bardstown. So there were a couple of different reasons for this. First of all, a year earlier, police officer Jason Ellis was shot and killed execution style on his way home from work in May 2013 in Bardstown. And that, to this day, that has not ever been solved.
I remember that.
And so when that happened, everybody got real nervous about stuff going on in town. And when this happened, it just heightened that. To have such a brutal murder happen after this execution of a police officer in a small town like Bardstown is pretty much unheard of. And people were very immediately concerned that these murders were somehow connected. So both of these cases, by the way, as of this recording in 2025, neither of those cases have been solved. Jason Ellis nor Kathy Netherland. And fun fact, this is not actually fun, but that was my segue. In 2015, Crystal Rogers in Bardstown went missing without a trace, and her father, Tommy Ballard, was murdered the year after that in 2016. There have been charges and arrests in Crystal's disappearance and assumed murder, and her father's murder is believed to be connected to hers, but police do not think that Kathy and Samantha's murders are connected to them in any way.
Yeah, I mean, Bardstown's just been racked lately.
It really has. So like 2013, you had this police officer murdered. 2014, you had this mother and daughter. 2015, you had this mother disappear. 2016, that missing mother's father got murdered out hunting with his grandson. So it was just like stuff was happening, and it was really weird. So another reason, obviously, that people were panicking was the location. Someone went into the Netherlands home in this really small community right outside of Bardstown called Botland. Bardstown is a small town. Botland is tiny.
I want to point out the county has the county, not Bardstown, has 11,000 people. So when we say small town, we mean it.
Small town.
Right.
And they live across the street from a liquor store. So people driving by in and out, nobody saw anybody go into their house. Nobody heard anything happen in their house. Nobody saw anybody leave their house. So there's like no information at all. And people were very concerned. This is the kind of place where people don't lock their doors, or at least they didn't in 2014.
I was just about to ask, was there any sign of breaking and entering? But
not that we're aware of. Yeah. So police started investigating this obviously right away, but there was very little evidence to go off of. And even to this day, again, this is 11 years later, police have not shared much at all of what their investigation has uncovered at this point, because it's still an active investigation. And I read a couple of articles that were written within the last year or so, because last year was the 10-year anniversary. And one of the articles said that they reached out to the state police for comment and questions for this article, and they refused to talk because it's still an active investigation. Wow. So I guess that's supposed to make us feel better that they're still looking into it.
The Rogers case or the Netherlands?
The Netherlands case. Okay. Like, they're still actively investigating it. The Rogers case, he's had his trial postponed. That's a whole other deep dive.
The skeptic in me says that they're not talking and they're still keeping it open because they're covering up for one of their own.
Well, I don't know.
Or they have a suspect, but they don't have the right amount of evidence yet
to do anything about it.
That's usually what it is that they know who it is.
You're so much nicer than me. I'm like,
no, I mean, I've listened to a lot of true crime podcasts, and I'm not an expert. Dear God, I'm not. But mostly it's like, they're like, oh, we know who did it, but we have to have evidence to arrest them.
Yeah. That's how it was in the Crystal Rogers case. Right. Everybody felt very confident who it was, and that's the person who's now going to be on trial for it. So with the Netherland case, from almost day one, police shared really a bad quality image of a black Chevy Impala as a car of interest. And at the time, it was like this car was around the time that this happened, and it was kind of like, oh, okay, like there was very little information. It was a really bad grainy picture. There's no license plate visible or anything. It's just like a car. I'm
not making light of this, but how do we know there wasn't a demon possession? And Sam and Dean didn't.
It could have been, Dean. They covered it up,
right.
Although usually they help, pin it on somebody, right? In some of their cases. Yeah. So Kentucky State Police said they believe whoever was in this black car was also in the house when the murders were committed. But still, 2025, the car and or a driver has never been identified or located. So last year, on the 10th anniversary of these murders, Kathy and Samantha's family released some new information that the police had not ever made public. So we found out last year, not only did police have this grainy image that they shared of this black car driving near the Netherland house that night, they actually have video from the liquor store across the street of this black car pulling in behind the Netherland house. Some unidentified person getting out, walking to the front door, being let in by an unknown person, and then leaving back to their car, driving away 15 minutes later. They never shared that back in the day. I don't know why they didn't share all of that and only shared this like bad image of the car. And I don't know why they didn't say like, we know this car was at their house and we know someone got out and went in there. I don't know why they wouldn't have shared that. Because I remember, 10 years ago, everybody was like, what's the deal with that car? Like, why are they so sure that car has anything to do with it? Because it kind of came across like somebody drove down the street. Like, okay, well, people live there, It was just, it's very strange to me. But they have this surveillance camera and they have all this footage that the family shared and made this public last year. So who let this person into the house? We don't know. It could have been Kathy or Samantha.
Like they could have known who it was.
They could have known the person. There could have been another, assailant already in the house. I have no idea. But they don't necessarily think the driver of that black car committed the murders, but they know that that person knows what happened. So at a minimum. So the family actually believes that because of the way Kathy and Samantha were killed, that Samantha might have been the primary target, but they don't have any idea why that would be or who would have been motivated to hurt her. But it is true that to be beaten and have your throat cut suggests much more personal killing.
I was going to say personal,
and a lot more rage than, being able to have that physical distance and theoretically emotional distance of shooting somebody. Those are very different things. So, and again, that's not a police theory. That's just the family talking. But again, even if that's true and she was the target, she was a 16-year-old girl. Who's that going to be? Who's going to want to target a 16-year-old girl? So it doesn't really
piece of shit.
But it doesn't help. It doesn't help point anybody in any kind of direction. It's just like a theory. So do with that what you will. Another important note in this case is that in January 2023, the Kentucky Attorney General appointed a special prosecutor to oversee the investigations into the murders of the police officer Jason Ellis, missing mother Crystal Rogers, and Crystal's father Tommy Ballard, but not Kathy and Samantha Netherland. And when he was asked about this, the Attorney General said he was asked, I assume by the state police, to not interfere with the Netherland investigation, which is just an interesting point.
Again, sounds like a cover-up to me.
Well, they have long said that they have never said in any way that they think the Netherland case is connected to the other three. They do think the other three are connected to each other. So I don't know if that's just like a more public way of saying they don't think it's connected.
Because one of the policemen did it.
Well, that's in the Crystal Rogers case.
You're going to get a shot, Mindy.
That's a whole other thing. But there are still 2025. There are no suspects. There are no named persons of interest in Kathy and Samantha's murders. It's been almost 11 years at this point. Samantha, 16 years old, was buried in her prom dress next to her mom, and they are both survived by Kathy's older daughter, who was not at home at the time. Their friends and family are still waiting for justice to be served, and they miss them every day. And if you have any information about this case, please call the Kentucky State Police, 270-766-5078.
I just in my head hear the crime junkie sound now.
I know,
they
right?
Always end on who to call.
But yeah, there was too much of a tie-in to pass up.
Mysteries.
But it really is. They need an August Dupin to come in and be like, "Here's all the things you missed," he does in the story.
Or a Marcus Dixon.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, that's true.
An alias thing.
100%. Either one, we'll take anybody. At this point.
Carl Lumbly.
Right. Yeah. Carl Lumbly in any character you want to play.
Now that I've really brought us all down.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's talk about the actual episode. Let's bring it up a little bit. What was your favorite moment?
Go ahead, guys.
Mine was Roderick's lemon speech.
Oh my gosh, mine too.
Fucking brilliant.
I loved that.
Tit lemons, yes. That was just hilarious.
Tit lemons.
I thought that was such a perfect demonstration of how his brain works.
Yes.
And also to show how he has obviously changed from 1970s Roderick, quoting poetry to his little wifey or whatever.
On the mattress on the floor.
Yeah. And then my favorite part of that whole scene was when it goes to Dupin and he is like, what the fuck? His face is just like, what did you even just say?
Where'd that come from?
I love that.
I'm just going to go ahead and point out that was my least favorite moment.
Was it really?
because it made me sick to my stomach, because he pretty much deduces that people with money control everything through media and patents. Yeah. And with the current state of our government, it's really scary, and it hit me in a different way.
Absolutely. I get that.
It's a brilliant speech, and he's not wrong, but it bothers me.
But the implications of it
I'm living in denial about what my reality is.
Can I move to that island?
Sure. The more the merrier. Come on down.
Well, and then, so my favorite moment, and Whitney, you kind of covered this whenever you were doing the breakdown of the show, but Verna begins to show up everywhere. Yeah. And I love it. So she's the supposed open heart patient to Victorine. She's a security guard at Rue. She's the sex worker at Tamerlane's house. And as far as we know, only Freddie and Leo haven't met her yet. But I'm going to go ahead and assume she killed the cat to kick off Leo's descent.
Yeah, I already watched the next episode.
Oh, you did? Yeah. Okay. Well, don't spoil it for the people.
No,
Don't spoil it for me, who hasn't watched it in 6 months.
Or me, who hasn't watched it in over a year.
Yeah, but seriously, like, it does seem like she is, like, pulling the strings of everyone. But did you notice that she, again, gives Camille an out?
Yes.
Remember I brought that up last episode?
I wrote that down, too.
She says, like, you could have died in your sleep at home.
Yeah, she said, you don't have to be here.
Right.
Yeah.
And then she was like, and then she essentially says something like, but I love how mean you people are.
Yes.
Yeah. And so she's like, I could have just killed you, given you, like, you know, little heart attack or something.
Yeah.
She's like, nope, I'm going to have a monkey eat your face.
Yeah, it was.
Because you're mean.
It was still giving her an out, but she felt a little more sinister with Camille than she felt with Prospero, to me anyway.
Right. Because, I mean, I don't think Prospero was actually trying to hurt anybody, and Camille was. Camille was hurting everybody.
I guess. I don't know. Well, I guess we'll find out more as we keep watching.
Prospero just wanted to fuck.
Well, he wanted to use the videos as blackmail.
That's true. Yeah.
He wanted to emotionally hurt people.
Yeah,
that's true. I keep forgetting that he did that.
I know.
I just feel like Prospero was a little less in your face about it, maybe.
I guess.
And I don't know.
Maybe he still had a sense of shame, and Camille definitely does not.
She does not.
Well, so Mindy, what was your least favorite moment?
I mean, besides the nasty acid crime scene, which was really a carryover from last episode.
Yeah.
The dead cat.
That was
poor, eviscerated, and stabbed cat.
That was a lot.
That was a lot of blood.
Yeah, that was.
And you know me,
gross.
My kitty cats. It made me sad.
Yeah, that was a lot to see.
Yeah.
Well, mine was different.
Worse than Camille bleeding out all over the floor.
Yeah, I honestly didn't find that as like gross.
Yeah.
Or
gory.
The cat. I thought the cat was worse, and I don't know why. I don't know if it was because I was so shocked.
We hate Camille and we don't.
Well, like I knew at that point what was going to happen to Camille, and the cat I think was very surprising.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know why, but my least favorite moment is related to the acid accident, but it's really Roderick basically blaming all of it on Freddie.
Thought about that.
They're
too.
in the hospital hallway with his wife in the ICU, and he's like, why was she even there? What's going on? And Roderick's like, this is your fault because you didn't get rid of the acid. Blah,
it
blah,
is
blah.
his fault. Yeah.
Well, but then later Roderick is like, well, here's why we hadn't done anything with this, and it all boils down to Roderick wanting money. You know what I mean? Like we were saving money, we were counting pennies, and if Freddie had done anything differently, Roderick would have like ripped him a new one.
Yeah,
because they wouldn't have known. Like, oh, you've prevented this horrible thing from happening to your wife and brother. They wouldn't have known that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I felt like that was extremely low to blame it all on him, because it was not all Freddie. It's Roderick's entire company and like the way that he has raised his children.
Yeah.
It's not just Freddie, you know? But I thought that was really low. So that brings us to our biggest revelation. Deb, what was yours?
So in this episode, we see our young Roderick get blackmailed by Fortunato with he like goes and he's like, dude, you stole my idea. And the guy's pretty much like, fuck you, I can do what I want. But he's like, but here's $500. Right. So a $500 check doesn't seem like much, but I wanted to factor in inflation.
Yeah.
And if you do that, it's nearly $4,000.
Yeah. I mean,
so that's a pretty big payoff and should have been indicative to old Roddy that Fortunato knew that they did something wrong.
100%. Yeah.
So he probably could have like raged some, even though Madeline told him not to. But he's like, I'm just going to pay you off.
Yep.
Right.
And he let him do it.
$4,000.
Yeah. And he let
so
him
that
do
was
it.
my biggest, because like when I was watching it, I was like $500,
Yeah.
and then I was like, oh, it's like 1972.
Yeah.
Well, and then sweet little Annabelle was like, we can afford to pay for our medicine now.
Yeah.
You did it. And I was like, you're too nice for these people. Like, you are 1000%
Poor
getting killed.
Annabelle Lee.
There's no way you're surviving much longer after 1980 if you make it that far.
No.
What
Then
was
there's
yours,
no way
Whit?
she does. Mine was finding out that the quote, the bastard children did not know who their father was and didn't meet him until their teen years or later, which surprised me. So Camille says she was 20 when she found out about / met Roderick. Leo was 18. Perry was 16. They didn't say anything about Victorine in that scene, I don't think. But that seems to be at odds with what Roderick told Dupin in that first episode about always having the door open for his kids, right?
Well, I think if you think about it, because, you know, he's just going around the world fucking people, obviously.
I mean, I guess, yeah.
If you think about it, he probably knew, and he was paying those women off, and he's like, I don't want
sure.
to be around snotty-nosed kids.
Well, yeah, but I want to know, I need more about Roderick's evolution, right? Like, who are all these? And I'm assuming that we're not going to find out.
Yeah, we don't really
anything
find out
about the
anything
moms.
about the mothers.
But
no.
like Camille, especially, I'm like, who is her mother? Because if she didn't meet Roderick until she was 20, he didn't take a nice, sweet 20-year-old girl and turn her into Camille. You know what I mean?
Right,
like
right.
she showed up at his doorstep already a raging bitch.
Yeah.
So like, who is her mom? What was that story? Like, I would love to know stuff like that, but I doubt that we'll get that. But yeah, that
you
was
can
my biggest
email Mike
revelation.
Flanagan and find
Yeah.
out.
I bet he'll write you right back.
Dear Mikey,
You never know. They love hearing from fans.
That's
Yeah.
true.
what was your biggest revelation, Mindy?
Mine was that Toby and Tina are in love. I was like, oh, okay. That came out of nowhere.
Beth, her name
And
is
then
Beth.
Yeah, that her name is actually Beth. I thought that was fun. But that whole scene really, and I already kind of talked about it. Camille's whole diatribe, she's so bitchy.
Yeah.
But I actually found her kind of funny in that scene while also being appalled and disgusted with her.
Yeah.
Like, she's such an enigma. I do know how to feel about her, but there's this one little part of me that's like, oh, she's funny.
She is funny. I mean, she is a caricature of a bitch.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I know people exist like that. I've never met anybody quite like that.
Yeah.
Right. To me, it's like a cartoon character. But I know, you know, there are super mega bitches out in the world.
There are.
Sorry.
What about your favorite tie-in to the original story, Mindy? What was yours?
We already talked a little bit about the first one. I thought it was really clever how they tied in the Rue Morgue of the Roderick Usher experimental.
That was mine too.
Yeah, I liked that tie-in, but I really also loved the tie-in, the way they tied in the primate killing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, it could have been like this huge joke, like really silly. And I thought it was kind of going to go there for a minute, but they made it really terrifying.
Yeah.
And especially with all, like when she walks in there and you see all these monkeys, or I guess they were all chimpanzees.
I guess.
Or orangutans. I don't know.
I'm not sure. I thought they said chimpanzees in the
I
show.
think they are
Chimpanzees.
chimpanzees. But you can see how mistreated they were. And like, you were like, you really got this sense that Victorine was really not doing something
Well,
very
Camille
good
even
there.
says, like, oh, you're all hopped up on adrenaline, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it got me thinking about other crazy animal experiments. And I started to go down like this weird, depressing rabbit hole. And then I came across some really outrageous ones. So I thought I would describe
Not depressing. Not depressing.
Yeah. I mean, it's depressing in the fact that they're still,
Yeah.
experimenting
It's
on
happening.
animals. But some of these outcomes or the reasons behind them are just fascinating. First, we have in 2020, scientists at the University of Wisconsin-Madison gave a group of starlings, little birds, a small dose of fentanyl, which is a medical painkiller that induces euphoria, right? Because they were curious to see if the birds would burst into song. Because
they're happy?
humans who are on drugs do that?
Baby,
Question mark.
you're firework.
But they did.
No, I'm like, dig through the ditches and burn through the witches.
Well, neither of those is what happened with birds.
That's too bad.
So they found out that under the influence of opioids, starlings did start to sing a sort of free-form jazz, like they were scatting.
I'm a scat man.
They were like, doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. I don't know.
That's so funny. What researcher was like, you know what that sounds like? Jazz, man, jazz.
But like, I don't even know what that helps at
Right.
all.
Yeah. Like, why is that
I don't know.
a research project?
So also in 2020, because clearly scientists had a lot of time on their hands.
Yes. Everyone was bored at home.
There's two scientists from Melbourne, Australia, and they decided they were going to vibrate some.
Keep going.
They were going to vibrate some earthworms on a loudspeaker.
Oh.
I
Like sexually?
I mean, the loudspeaker produces the vibrations, and there's
Hey-o.
earthworms. So I guess it's like sitting on a washer and dry. I don't know. Anyway, but because worms are mostly made of water, they behave like water droplets, and they start to kind of ripple.
Oh.
And this ripple creates a special kind of ripple called the Faraday wave.
Ripped for her pleasure.
Somehow, these scientists believe that this discovery could be used to develop a safe and non-invasive way to connect the brain to a computer. Because it's a wave, it's a ripple.
Earthworms?
Like it's a ripple vibration.
Oh.
I'll sit on a washing machine for
I mean,
research.
I guess because our brains are also liquid.
A lot of water, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of water. I don't know.
Well, okay.
I'm like, okay, you go. I don't know what's come of that in the last 5 years, but whatever. Then there were some scientists in Chile, and they knew that all birds are descended from a group of dinosaurs called theropods. So they decided to put a plunger on a chicken's ass
Stop it.
to see if giving it an artificial tail would make it walk like a dinosaur.
Did it?
The experiment actually worked.
How do they know what a dinosaur walked like?
Well, they
I think they're basing
were
it off
putting a
their
tail
anatomy.
on it,
Yeah.
and the center of gravity. They were trying to like
Okay.
replicate based on like fossils.
I do
what,
words, not science.
but you know
Okay.
they were trying to replicate it based on like fossil findings.
Yes.
So giving a chicken, which is a descendant of these theropods,
Yeah, I
giving
get
it
you
a
there.
tail.
And it did?
Well, okay. So this article quote says the video clearly shows the chicken prowling around like a no-budget version of Jurassic Park. So, you know, that's the scientific evidence right there.
You see the ripple in the puddle, but it's not a T-Rex. It's a chicken with a plunger on
Yes.
its butt.
Did they make mini plungers?
That's what
'Cause
I'm
chicken
like-
butts are kind of
Okay,
tiny.
you have to go to these because there is. I do think they show the actual video.
video, I bet
I
they
didn't watch
do.
the video, but I did see the like thumbnail, and yes, there's a little tiny plunger sticking out of this
For the
chicken's
record,
ass.
we're not like pro animal testing.
No.
But this
No.
is funny and this isn't hurting them for the
Right.
record. Yeah.
I mean, they're not killing these animals,
Right,
But
right.
they're just embarrassing them.
I was going to say, they're not even really,
That
they're not putting them in
chicken
danger.
never got laid again. They called him old plunger butt after that.
Once you see your man waddle around with a plunger on his butt, you can't unsee it.
The mystery's gone. This one actually has real life application, and it's actually pretty cool. Scientists placed brain implants into the cortex of a monkey in the areas that control their arm and hand movements. Mm-hmm. So these would monitor the neurons that fire from there and then send that information to a computer, which then translated the patterns into commands for a robotic arm that was not connected to the monkey.
Interesting.
Yeah, so the monkey was actually able to control the robotic arm with just its thoughts. It learned to reach for food. It could twist knobs. It could press buttons. And this actually could lead to some prosthetic limbs that would help paralyzed people live independently.
Yeah.
That's
I
pretty
think
cool.
that one's a
That's
pretty
cool.
cool one.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I feel bad for the poor monkey. He has brain implants now, and he's like, everywhere he goes, he's
But
thinking
he-
shit,
but
and like
he
computers
gets-
are doing stuff.
He gets
but-
laid all the time.
Yeah.
he might, yeah.
Hey, bring that other arm over here. I want to be in a polyamorous
It's like-
relationship.
It's like Dorian's shadow hands and Throne of
Right,
Glass. It's like
exactly.
extra hands.
So a couple more. This one actually was super intriguing to me. And I, again, suggest you follow the links in the show notes to see the outcomes because there's pictures of spider webs, and I'll tell you why it's interesting. In 1995, NASA researchers got spiders high on different drugs so they could see the effects on their web weaving skills. So they gave the spiders different drugs like marijuana, speed, LSD, and caffeine. And the effects were actually quite like you would expect based on how humans would react to these drugs. So the spiders who had weed would start their webs and then lose interest halfway and never finish.
They needed a gnat, man.
Yeah, they never finished it. The one that was on speed worked super, super fast, but it wasn't aware of the big picture and it left a bunch of gaps in the web.
Yeah.
The acid-tripping spider wove a very symmetrical and psychedelic web that looked really pretty, but it was not functional. Like it couldn't catch bugs. And then the caffeinated spider's web is so janky. It's completely out of whack and non-symmetrical. I don't even know. I was trying to describe it. You have to go look at the picture. It just looks like what you think your brain looks like if you're hopped up on caffeine.
What do they say on Charlotte's Web? Like, big pig. What does she put in
I don't
his
remember.
first one?
Some pig.
Some pig. Yeah, that's what the caffeine one says. On accident, though.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, backwards and like Sanskrit. I don't know. It was fascinating, though, to see these pictures like of a normal web next to these other like drug affected.
Yeah.
The LSD one was like, man, I don't want to catch the bugs. I just want to have something look pretty for them to look at.
Yeah.
I just want to dance here in my bell bottoms. All right. And so finally we come to rats and pants.
Oh. Well, all right.
I don't think any rats were actually harmed or like, except for maybe psychologically. I don't know.
Again, they didn't want to wear pants, Wendy.
So an Egyptian scientist named Ahmed Shafiq dressed 75 rats in different kinds of pants over a full year to, I kid you not, see how it affected their sex life.
Please tell me the ones in polyester got laid less.
The results were quite interesting. The rats who wore cotton or wool pants were much more likely to get lucky, while the rats who wore polyester or polycotton blend were more likely to strike out with the ladies.
You're like, dude, you look like a douche.
So Shafiq believed that the reason for this is that the poly and polyblend materials created, quote, irritating electrostatic fields around the genitals, which led to a drop in sexual activity.
Do you think the ones in the cotton pants, they were like gray sweatpants?
Yeah.
And every time the hamster was on the wheel, they could see his donkey.
Yes.
Or rat, I guess.
So there you have it. Cotton or wool trousers only, people.
There you go.
Yeah.
Listen up, folks.
The scientists have spoken.
That is so random.
What about denim? I'm currently wearing denim.
I don't think the rats were
They weren't
accommodating with the denim.
they weren't amenable to the denim.
Their little limbs couldn't. Their big feet couldn't fit in the skinny jeans.
Well, thank you so much for all of that, Mindy.
I thought I'd bring it up a
great.
little
That
bit.
was fun. Yeah,
You know.
no, that was fun. Well, my favorite tie-in to the original story is basically the same as you. I really liked how they worked in the name Rue Morgue, and also, like you said, brought in the chimpanzee as opposed to the escaped orangutan in the story. I think Mike Flanagan and the showrunners are doing a really great job making these little changes to the original stories to obviously tie in the story, but to make it work for the story they are telling in this modern.
It definitely
modern
still
family.
has a Poe feel to it.
For sure,
And
yeah.
it still, I feel like, kind of keeps the integrity of the story.
Yeah, because like you said, it's very easy for some of these to be goofy,
Yeah.
or to really fall flat and not have the creepy Poe vibe that they're going for. But I think they're doing a really good job making things work without it being absolutely ridiculous. Because when I read Poe's story, I was like,
what
this
the
is
fuck are they gonna
absolutely
do with
this
this?
is
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, like this is a ridiculous story. But there we go. What about you, Deb?
Well, I wanted to add in that when I was reading up on this story, did you know it's the first recognized detective story
I did.
in literature, which I thought was kind of cool.
Like Dupin's supposedly the first archetype of a detective.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's not actually a detective either. He's not even a policeman.
Oh, is he just like an armchair detective?
Yeah.
In the story, yes.
In the story,
I
yes.
don't think I caught that.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's just a guy who likes to think.
He had a bunch of money and he lost it. And then he fell from grace and he decided he was just going to be a man of leisure and
Yeah.
go solve crimes.
I want to be a man of leisure.
for funsies.
That'd be nice. So my other tie-in though is the orangutan. So it's supposed to be symbolic of irrationality, which is pretty much like the downward spiral of Camille, who's trying to hold everyone captive with her power, her blackmail, and her coercion. And so I like that even though like a chimpanzee, a monkey, let's just say a monkey kills her, she's really symbolic of the orangutan in the story.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
That is a really good point. I love, too, how the assistants, Toby and Tina Beth. Tina Beth, how they got money out of it. They got a severance package. She Venmo'd them their severance before any of this happened.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't even think about that.
That would have sucked if they were waiting for that check the next day.
I know.
Well, yikes. Well, let's talk about episode MVPs. Mine was Camille, actually.
Mine too.
I don't like her as a character, but she is so good as an actress. And that big conversation with her assistants that you were talking about earlier, Mindy, at one point they say, "We're sorry for your loss." And she looks at them like, what are you talking about? Like, she looks so confused, like why you're even saying that to her and like what those words mean put together. And I loved that moment from a characterization point of view, because number one, it was just good acting, but also it really shows you like who she is.
Yeah.
Right. Like I do not accept these condolences. What are you talking about? Like this, she was so bewildered by them saying, "Sorry for your loss." Like, no, your brother died. Like, that did happen.
Yeah.
Right. I really enjoyed that moment a lot. I hope we get more of her in flashbacks and not just like bloody ghost, but I feel like we're just going to get
choke Roderick.
Right. I think we're just going to get bloody ghost. So,
So I also liked her character a lot. You said is like full scale bitch, right?
Yeah.
So when the assistants try to break up with her, she looks at them and says, "This is a full service commitment." I'm like, no, you were coercing your assistants into having sex with you.
Yeah.
And then I also love that she calls Leo Xbox Gatsby.
I wrote that down too.
That was funny.
I was like 100%. Like all the reasons I like her were her quotes. And then finally she said, "Everyone knows that edible arrangements are what you send to people you hate."
And he's like, so
yes.
Yeah. And I mean, like I said earlier, she's a PR star. She uses sympathy to garner attention away from the court case, and then makes Augie look insensitive when he brings up the case. The reporter's even like, "Are you saying that he should have died?" And he's like, "Oh, fuck." And she's like, "Yes, I did it." Again, very smart PR, but not a very nice person.
Yeah, not a good person.
I mean, I guess you have to be ruthless to do that job well.
If you want to be successful.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of successful people that aren't assholes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but mine was Verna again, because she's fucking everywhere, and she's great fucking with all of them. Like Victorine, Tammy, Camille. We've already talked about how she showed up to all three of them in this episode. She's totally holding the reins. She's driving the whole Usher shit show.
Yeah.
She's ruthless, and I kind of love her.
Yeah, I do too. She's great.
Yeah, because she doesn't really have to kill them in the way that she is, but she's getting
having fun with it.
She's getting some justice.
Yeah.
Right? Which I can appreciate.
Yeah,
some
for sure.
poetic justice.
Oh.
See what I did there?
Mindy, who was your favorite secondary character?
I couldn't decide between Toby and Tina, because bravo for calling out Camille on her shit and her inappropriate relationship.
Beth.
Yeah.
Sorry.
My name is Beth.
My name is Beth. Or Julian, because poor guy, he unfortunately loves an addict and he loves cats.
Yeah.
And I just love Julian. I just feel
it
like
was his cat.
I know. And I just feel like he's stuck in a bad situation.
Yeah. I'm sure that's going to work out great for him.
Because, and at first I'm like, why is he subjecting himself to this? And then I'm like, oh yeah, because he's hot.
And there's a lot of money, and there's a nice apartment.
Yeah.
Right.
Leo is like, he's fun and sweet.
He's funny.
He's charismatic.
Yeah. He's got his problems, but he's not the same kind of bad guy as like Camille.
Right. I don't want to live with him, but I'd fuck him for sure.
Well, my favorite secondary character is actually Rufus, the Fortunato CEO, and only because he said a line that made me laugh. He says, "An idea is a fart your brain makes." Which I immediately started singing that to like, yes,
your brain makes.
Exactly, like the Cinderella song.
I'm really glad
100%.
to know I was not the only one.
It made me laugh quite a bit, and I enjoyed that a lot. So he was my favorite secondary character just for that. What about you, Deb?
Mine was Mr. Arthur Pym, Luke Skywalker, Mark Hamill.
And he talks like this.
And for several reasons. So number one, he walks into that warehouse full of burnt, dead bodies with barely anything covering his face.
I noticed that,
too.
it
had to smell disgusting.
Horrible. Yeah.
And he immediately goes into like their wet man mode, right? He pulls the phone out, he puts it in a pocket to make sure that no one can get it. Yeah. He has cameras scrubbed at the warehouse. He preps Fedric on what to say to the media. He has the party pinned onto felons at the party, and we might hate him, but he's really damn good at his job.
It's just like Camille, right? Like you're not a good person, but you're very good at what you're doing.
Right. And this really did make me wonder how companies like Fortunato can get away with what they do. And it's shocking how many stories there are about companies that knowingly hurt their consumers. You want to hear them?
But I want to live in denial.
Well, you can forget these when I'm done, okay?
Deal.
Let's dive right in. First, we have the company Guidant, who sold 37,000 detective heart defibrillators and didn't tell doctors for 3 years that they were defective.
For 3 years?
Fluid in the heart would break the defibrillator seal and make the wires short circuit. So when someone needed, to jump their heart back into rhythm, the defibrillator was ineffective.
It couldn't.
So people would just die.
From
their heart going out of rhythm, going to cardiac arrest and all of that. So
from what was supposed to save them.
Right. 37,000 devices. Okay. So speaking of heart valves, there was a heart valve from Bjork Shiley that was defective before it even hit the market. And the company kept it a secret for 7 years. It resulted in several fatalities, and it was called a bomb in the heart. The creator of the valve and other whistleblowers were rebuffed and told to settle down in a company memo.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, this feels like Victorine.
Yeah.
In a lot of these, there's written documentation of the CEOs, the PR people being just shut the fuck up, okay?
Right.
Oh God.
And this was one of them. Okay, so Johnson & Johnson. Johnson & Johnson made $1 billion in sales from a heartburn drug named Propulsid, even after knowing it was fatally harming patients. Children were most susceptible, and the FDA said J&J couldn't market to children, and they were like, that's cool, because we're just going to push our educational efforts in doctors' offices to give the drug to children instead. This resulted in 90% of the drug going to kids. And when the FDA recommended a warning label, internal analysis declined the suggestion because it would equal $250 million in lost sales. So 300 people died and 16,000 were injured by this drug before the FDA fully stepped in, and Johnson & Johnson finally pulled it off the market.
You know what, now, it seems like every drug in the side effects, they're like, it may cause death.
Right. Well, they pretty much have to, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's keep going and talking about Johnson & Johnson. This is a drug you've probably heard of, Ortho Evra, the birth control patch.
Oh, yeah.
It's still sold today.
Is it really?
So keep that in mind. It was introducing too much estrogen into women's systems, causing heart attacks and strokes. Researchers in human trials flubbed the numbers by reducing the incidence of heart attack and stroke by 40% in their findings, and refusing to do trials against another birth control drug. So normally you would compare the efficacy to another drug and the side effects to see if they're equal. And they said that they were worried there was too high of a chance, and this is quoted, too high of a chance that the study may not produce a positive result for their drug.
This is not making me want to trust anybody.
Oh, I know. So while this birth control is still on the market, there's a black box label to make sure patients know about the increased risk. But let me ask you guys this. When's the last time you stopped and looked at those labels on the drugs that you get?
Right.
Never. I mean, I will read the side effects, but because I want to know if my eye twitching is me having brain cancer or a side effect, right? But yeah.
I feel like they make those intentionally long and wordy and drawn out so you won't read them.
Well, it's like the Surgeon General warning on cigarettes. It's in 2 font,
right?
Point 2. Okay, so a body armor company decided to continue, and I quote, operating as though nothing is wrong until one of our customers is killed or wounded.
Oh my gosh.
After they knew for 5 years that a bullet would be able to penetrate their bulletproof vests. So a cop died he was hit a routine traffic stop.
So we're not going to worry about it until it's a problem.
Right. 100%.
Oh,
this is what
my
all of
God.
these people were doing.
Can I just say, this is why people refused to take the COVID vaccine. This is why
100%.
parents don't give their kids the vitamin K shot. This is why one of my former students today said that she's not worried about the current administration defunding cancer research because she thinks that we already have a cure for cancer and that one political party is just withholding it so they can make money. Like, this is why people believe stuff like that, because this crap happens.
Right. So when I
crazy.
was an executive at a nonprofit, and it wasn't cancer, but someone told me for the nonprofit I worked for that we had a cure, but we were working with big pharma and didn't want to tell anyone. And I looked at her and I said, do you know how incredibly offensive that is to me? That you think I would work for a
personally,
company that would do that? Like, no. Absolutely not. But you're right.
This is why people think that.
Yeah. And you think the FDA and, all these like checks and balances, they're supposed to take care of all of this. But if the company's not disclosing to the FDA, they can't do anything about it.
Well, and if a government administration takes away funding for the checks and balances
and appoints some idiot to that position.
Dr. Oz.
How do we feel about
RFK
this?
Jr.
If you can't tell already from this podcast how we feel about things, I'm sorry. I mean, we have a strong point of view. That doesn't mean you have to agree with us, but it is what it is. So
we have the microphones.
Okay, so do you all remember those cute little Ford Pinto cars from the 70s?
Yes.
Remember these?
No, I do.
They were
I
like
totally
little
remember
tiny,
these.
like ovals.
Darren makes
is what
fun
they
of them
look
all
like.
the time.
I wasn't alive yet.
Okay. Well, as they were placed on the market, Ford knew that there was a high chance of explosion if there was a rear end accident. Now, I'm not talking about like someone hits you 80 miles per hour. I'm talking about as slow as 20 miles per hour.
Oh,
like a little fender
So
bender.
we're talking about a fender bender could make your car explode.
Oh.
So Ford
That
did
escalated quickly.
Ford did a cost analysis and decided that if a human life is worth $200,000 a pop, it was less expensive to let people die than to fix the cars. Ford didn't recall the 1.5 million cars for 5 years.
Oh.
Yeah. So on this website that's linked in the show notes, you can see their cost analysis breakdown.
Right.
It was going to cost like $11 per car to fix it. And they decided compared to the $200,000 per life that it wasn't worth it.
Wow.
Okay. So finally, let's discuss the case that brought forth that burying chemicals is dangerous. I don't know why we had to figure that out.
Burying?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So a pesticide company buried barrels for 5 years, sometimes breaking the barrels that were already buried because they needed to make more room. This caused chemicals to leak into the water supply, which caused people's eyes to burn in the shower, a white powder to be left on dishes that went through the dishwasher, and for a little girl to produce a vomit that bleached the hardwood floors in her house.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and they did the same thing, a cost analysis, and decided when it became a problem, it would be a problem.
It's like the Aaron Brockovich.
Yeah, and it's funny because I did look up to make sure that wasn't the same company.
Right.
Nope, just someone else was doing
A different
it.
one.
Yeah,
Jeez.
yeah. And I tried to come up with ones that you hadn't heard about. All the
Sure,
ones
yeah.
you heard about are also in this linked article. But your little girl to vomit something that bleaches the floors, can you imagine?
I would burn the world down.
Yeah.
If you did that to my kid.
Right. Yeah. So all these companies, of course, are paying like millions and millions in settlements, but it's still way less money than they made.
Right.
So they don't really.
They
give a fuck.
took that risk. They knew that was a possibility to have to settle for millions of dollars, and they decided that was preferable than to save people.
Right. So every one of these companies has an Arthur Pym that's doing those things,
and
right?
a Camille probably
or
too.
someone that's saying like, is it really going to affect anybody? Are these Pintos really going to explode that many times?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're like, so you get a little burn, it's no problem, right? Hopefully you don't die. Good luck. It's just, and it's awful. Like, to me, this is such a rudimentary form of evil to say that people dying is more cost effective than you replacing a part on a car
to save a life.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you.
So
humane. I mean,
good luck sleeping tonight.
All right, everybody take a second to forget everything you just heard. Exactly. Yes.
I love you so much right now.
Oh man. Well, let's talk about questions that we have. I actually already shared both of mine, because one was about who is Camille's mom, why did she turn out the way that she was, and kind of the same question for Leo, for Prospero, for Victorine, like what was their upbringing all like,
and why did they not find him until
yes, like
then,
what's that about? And then the other question I have was the same thing that you talked about, Deb, with Verna giving Camille and Prospero like kind of an out, but not really an out. Like, what's going on there? Those are my only questions.
You could just go home and you'll die in your sleep.
Yeah, she's like, you don't have to be here.
But if someone said
here?
that to you, you would be like, fuck you, you don't know. Like, they just thought she was like a crazy person.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And even Camille threatens to kill her.
Yeah,
she's like, don't you know who I am? I'll fucking kill you.
Yeah.
And Verna's like, haha, no, you won't. A monkey's going to eat your face, bitch.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of monkeys, are we to believe that Victorine does, in fact, cut up the chimpanzees and sneak them out in her purse? Are we supposed to think that's true? Because, like, we don't ever find out what happens.
I kind of believe it.
That is some seriously fucked up shit. Again, same thing that these companies I just talked about are doing.
Yeah.
Right? They'll never know, and I'll fix it when I fix the problem.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Or I'm not going to tell anyone until it becomes a problem.
I think I believe all of the rumors that they're talking about have at least some truth to them.
Yeah.
Right.
For
For the record, if any of these companies come at us, I'm just spouting what I got off the internet. And if it's not true, I'm happy to do a retraction, but don't come at us. We're poor.
You ain't getting nothing.
Yeah.
We make book festival, money. That's it. We go to
and then
book
we
festivals
spend
for
twice
free.
as much
Yeah.
there.
I can
So
give
good
you
luck.
$5.
How about this extra copy of this signed book I have?
I've got a dildo bookmark.
You can't have any of my Bridget Kemmerer or Emily Rath books. Sorry.
how about this 3D printed peen that I have?
I actually found one I was cleaning out my company bins that I take when I travel, and because we take them to book festivals, and I found a little black penis in there the other day, a 3D printed one.
I have a pink or a purple glittery one. I think I
Nice.
got it at one of them last year.
Thanks, book festival.
Yes,
friends.
thanks.
Mindy, what questions do you have?
The only question I had was like, what did the poor cat do? Did he knock over a glass? Did he like?
I really
To
do
get
think Verna
killed?
killed him.
Yeah, to pull.
Yeah,
did he
I don't
pull
think
out
the
the
cat did
toilet
anything.
paper? Did he? Poor kitty.
Yeah, I don't think the cat did anything.
I know.
But again, I think it's a shitty boyfriend to not wake up when you hear a commotion.
Yeah.
He had to have heard something. He didn't even have a box fan on in his room.
Yeah, that was weird.
Verna was in there whispering to him, "Don't listen, don't listen."
Go to sleep.
Your boyfriend's a creep.
Well, what are you looking forward to?
Just the bonkerness of this show.
Yeah.
Carrying
I
on.
can't wait
Yes.
to see what else fucking ridiculous
else
is going to
not gonna
happen.
happen?
Well,
Yeah.
I'm having so much fun finding all these Easter eggs related
Yeah.
to Edgar Allan Poe, and
me
it's just been spectacularly
It
silly.
is.
Yeah.
It's cool to see how much thought and detail they put into the show to bring all these connections to the source material.
And I thought I
appreciate
was
that.
like a Poe aficionado. Like I really thought I was like a hardcore Poe stan, but like I don't know anything hardly.
You thought you were a hoe for Poe.
I did.
Oh, that's
No, you're
funny.
too old for that, apparently.
Yeah, I'm
Oh yeah,
older than 13.
We're all out of that age range, aren't we? Well, I
Leonardo DiCaprio of
Yeah.
the 1800s.
yeah, as soon as you turn 19, that's it. I think the biggest thing that I'm looking forward to is just seeing the continuing change of Roderick from the past Roderick into the current Roderick, and I'm starting to wonder, like, how is this all going to end? Because I kind of feel like
Not well, Whitney.
Well, sure, but I kind of feel like that it's either going to be Roderick and Madeline, like. I don't know. Maybe they're going to do it as the house falls on them or something, or he and Dupin are going to get buried under the house or whatever. You know,
one teeny tiny spoiler: it's not an HEA.
Oh, well then I'm not going to watch the rest of this.
You liar.
Yeah. Is there anything else about the show before we move into our nerdiest things of the week?
No.
What were your all's nerdiest things of the week? Who wants to go first?
Deb should go first.
Well, this just happened today. I was on Facebook, and there is a PhD student who breaks down things in shows. And so she was dressed in full Regency wear. And I cannot find the link anywhere. I'll try to find it before we post it and put it in the show notes. But she broke down the Bridgerton finger bang.
Oh my God.
And that's what she calls it, the Bridgerton finger bang. And she was like, people have asked me
in the carriage.
Right. If like in terms of physics, if this was possible.
I think I saw this.
Okay, yeah. So carriages were super tiny. Yes, they were very, very elegant. Right. But she pointed out a couple of things. The first thing she points out is women of that time did not wear underwear. So he did have easy access, because that was one of the questions, is like, how did he just pull her dress up? And she showed all these paintings from that time, like making fun of it, where women are just like tripping and their ass is hanging out. Okay. So then she starts talking about the center of gravity of carriages. And I didn't know that a big worry of that time, because of the way they sat, is they were like top heavy. So they would roll over all the time and crush people to death. Right.
Oh.
And so she said if you sat in a carriage, you had to essentially sit super still. So she shows like him like getting up on her and like rocking the carriage. And she's like, it would have fallen and they would have all died. So she's like, it would have been great. She would have gotten her finger banged, but she would have died, and then her ass would have been hanging out of the dress. It was so funny. And I guess she's going on tour and like doing these types of things. So
good for her.
You have the best job ever, and you have a fucking PhD, and I love that you're applying science to this.
Right.
It's so much fun.
Taking it very seriously.
I will try to find it, but it was one of those
her job.
Oh, go ahead. No, it's just one of those where I watched it without like clicking on it. So I can't find like my link history or whatever.
Yeah.
I want either her job or the job of the chick that reads the suggestively dirty books.
Oh, the one I sent you today? Well, there was another one I found too. So I sent you guys one today where it's like, Karen just wants her cookie eaten. And then I found another one where it was like, Farmer Lindsay really needs her field plowed. It hasn't been plowed since Farmer John 6 years ago. So funny.
Mindy, what was your nerdiest thing?
Mine is that I ordered, so I've discovered Blackwell's, which is like a UK based bookstore.
Oh, yeah.
And okay, UK people will say that our book covers are better than theirs. I totally disagree. I always loved the UK book covers better. So I have been ordering shit from Blackwell's, but now it's free shipping, and I think it ships from
like internationally.
I think it's they must have a warehouse,
right?
Nationally.
There's no way they do it for free across the ocean.
Yeah, and so I've been ordering. I ordered. So not that I need another full set of Emily Rath books, but I do, because these have the cutest like cartoon covers on them.
Yeah,
and then I also just ordered a whole set of Candy Steiner's books. Also cute little cartoon covers that are way cuter than the ones that we can get here.
Well, and also like when you visit the UK, like my big story from going last year is I bought 12 books in 2 days because they're half the price.
Yeah.
It's insane. And I did get some covers that were different because they're pretty.
I know. And it's unique and different. So
I like the more discreet covers. I was doing screenshots earlier today for my January book tracker, and I read this whole hockey series. And when I downloaded them, they were discreet covers. But then when I was screenshotting from Goodreads, it's all like shirtless dudes.
You know, you can change that.
You can?
Yeah, you go to the different editions.
I did not know
you can't. And I will tell you, I don't think you can do it on the stupid phone app because but you can do it from
the computer.
From the computer.
Well, I might have to go do that for next month, but I've already done it.
It'll say show all editions, and you just click on that, and it'll show all the different covers of it.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that hot tip.
Since you were talking, I did find the link. She does something called Kinky History, and it's Dr. Esme Louise James. I'll put her in the show.
That's awesome.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
no,
I just
that's
found it.
That's awesome.
Well, my nerdiest thing is not the hunky shirtless book covers, but my sister called me the other day and she said, I was humming this song and I thought my kids would know what it was from, and they don't. So I told them I was going to call somebody who would know. And my nephew in the background was like, yeah, because you're a nerd. And so my sister starts humming this song. She was like, what movie is this from? She was like, and I was like, oh, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Yeah.
I was like, it's Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. And she was like, yes. And my nephew was like, we knew it. And it just made me laugh a lot. Like they literally cheered and were like, "Yeah, you're a nerd. We knew you'd know."
I love that your sister watches Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Oh, that was one of our favorite movies growing up. For sure.
It was a movie where I was like, this shit is boring. When are they going to kiss?
Oh, we love that movie. She's already had her kids watch it. And I can't believe that she had her kids watch it.
I don't know that I've ever seen it.
Oh, it's so crazy.
It's so boring.
It's like an LSD trip.
I was going to say, do I need to be on drugs to watch it?
I love it because it's like a nostalgic childhood thing, but it's Dick Van Dyke. It's a musical. It's a flying car. They end up in some weird like fantasy realm, but there's the fantasy realm that they end up in, the king and the queen hate kids. And there's a child catcher who's like the most terrifying.
Okay, that's creepy.
There's like a terrifying looking dude who is the child catcher and he like lures the kids out. No, he doesn't. I'll show you a picture later. But no, that I don't know where that came from, but that's Pete's dragon with the beard that I was afraid of. But no, like I literally had nightmares about that character when I was a kid, so I'm really surprised my sister shows that movie to her kids. I will not show my kids that movie, but they wouldn't get it anyway. You just don't get it, okay? But it's really good. You should watch it. Everybody watch JJ Bang Bang.
That's your homework.
We'll get some drugs.
Yeah.
Legal drugs.
Yes.
Watch The Fall of the House of Usher and then watch Chitty Chitty.
Do not watch The Fall of the House of Usher on drugs.
No. I do not. I would not recommend that. So that is it for today's episode. Next week, we are watching episode 4 of The Fall of the House of Usher, The Black Cat.
I haven't read this one. So
I haven't either. Yeah. So, and also Poe's short story of the same name. We'll see you then.
Bye. Like what you heard in this episode? Follow Our Nerdiest Thing on Instagram at instagram.com/Our Nerdiest Thing or Facebook at facebook.com/Our Nerdiest Thing. We love hearing from fellow nerds. Email us at ournerdiestthing@gmail.com.